This is Arts Alive. I'm Lynda Philippi. My guest is Ellie Gunn, and Ellie is a writer who lives here in McMinnville, and she's going to talk about your newest work.
Yes, thank you.
Welcome. So I Promised to Go Wandering, kind of, but not exactly, picks up maybe where your other one left off. You want to talk about that story a little bit?
Sure. Well, my intention after One Handful of Earth was to write a sequel because everybody wanted to know what happened to the characters because they were basically left by the side of the sea after they were evicted from the Strath of Kildonan in 1813. So I had to go back to Scotland to find out more.
Darn.
And since I was going to go anyway, I might as well stay for 10 weeks. Mm-hmm. And then my dream had always been to actually feel like I was living in Scotland, not just a tourist visiting. So I took the plunge and bought a ticket. So I left on June 17th, 2013 with my sister, and we did a 2-week quick tour. And then she went home, and I basically camped out in this little town, Helmsdale, which is on the North Sea, on this map right here. Mm-hmm. And just outside of Helmsdale is where my first book took place. So I was very much at home there, but at the same time, I didn't always know where I was going to stay each night. I had a bed in the hostel there some of the time. And then there was a period where I was kind of homeless. I mean, every single B&B was full, every single hotel was full. But I was in this restaurant, and I was writing, because I was writing the sequel all this time, when the playlist in the bar of the hotel played Mr. Tambourine Man, Bob Dylan's song. And the phrase wandering keeps appearing in that song. And I thought, actually, he's saying, I promised to go wandering. And so I wrote that down as my theme for the rest of my travels in Scotland. And then when I get home and started trying to piece together what I'd written as short stories, it was just too hard to have the people communicate with each other, which was my idea with the short stories, because some of them were in Canada, some of them were in Australia, some were in the United States, and some were in Scotland. And so my husband actually suggested that I have a narrator who tells about them. Okay. So, besides me. And I've had this experience a couple times in my life that I've had very close family or friends who have had a young person, a son or a daughter, die at a young age. 19 and 24 in these cases. And so the 19-year-old was a young man named Evan Goodwin, my husband's nephew. And so I decided to make a young man named Evan be the narrator of this story.
I love it.
So I made up this character with the help of a lot of 20-year-olds because he's 22 and he's in Canada. And he's a person who likes to read fiction on a porch and not go to wild parties. And so he's very shy, but he's graduated from college and he doesn't know what to do with his life. And his grandpa says, I'm going to give you some money. Would you please just go to Scotland? So he does. And while he's there, he starts researching his family history, which I'm now making up from this other person's family who died, and their names are Murray. So I named him Evan Murray, and he's going to the Strath of Kildonan to find out what happened to the Murrays in 1813.
Right.
So he picks up where I left off.
So he picks up the thread of your earlier work.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, and so then you can kind of update and tell the rest of the story.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, what happened, though, was I used all my notes from my 10 weeks in Scotland and had him go the same places I went and stay in the same places and meet the same people, only he has a totally different experience because he's a 22-year-old guy.
Right, exactly.
Instead of like an old hippie in Scotland. And so most of the book, it turns out, is his adventures in Scotland with the theme, I Promised to Go Wandering.
So here's a question. Who had more fun, you or Evan?
It's a toss-up, really, Lynda. We're still arguing about it.
Okay.
I think I did. He thinks he did.
Okay.
But he ends up writing the fiction that I actually wrote. I'm giving him credit. And he tells the story of all the displaced people and where they went. And it's not a whole novel for each of them. It's more like how they ended up surviving after they became homeless and scattered around the world. some of their trials and tribulations, but not the full extent. But I tried to leave every group of them with the sense of community that they started with.
And in the original book, the people wound up homeless through...
The evictions from one of the landlords
Okay.
who wanted to make room for sheep
Okay.
to make money. And so
They'd been sort of like tenant farmers, something like that?
yeah, yeah. And Evan Murray, part of what he's doing is he's doing research about that era. So he's getting mad. I mean, the more he finds out about what happened to people, not just his Murray ancestors, but everybody, the more upset he's getting about it. And so he goes on a few rants that are what I'd like to say too, about greed.
Sure.
And then comes to grips with the future that everyone ended up with. So I had a really good time writing this book.
When you were in Scotland writing, were you writing longhand on a
Yes,
on a
longhand
pad?
pencil on
Okay.
a notebook, which
Wow.
is what I have him doing too. And he doesn't take a computer, he doesn't take a phone even, or a camera, and neither did I.
Really? Not even a camera?
Yeah, not even a camera.
Wow.
Yeah. Because
So all of your pictures were sketches, written sketches.
I have sketches, colored pencil sketches, and there's going to be one in the book. And my sister, for the first 2 weeks, she took pictures.
Okay.
Because she took a camera. So I do have an album of photos that she took. So one of them will be on the back of the book. But this one that's the cover is actually a photo from the young man, Evan Goodwin, that
Okay.
he took. And I played around, and Gail Watson in Newburgh is printing the book for me and helping me step by step figure out the cover and the photos and the print and the type and all of that stuff. She's been wonderful
Gail is phenomenal.
and phenomenal.
Not only is she
Yeah.
fabulous at printing and all of this, but she's also our intrepid camera person over
Yes.
here. Yes. That's great.
So the
It looks beautiful. And now are these two, the plaids of each of your books, are those a special clan plaid?
yeah, so
tartan?
this is, both of them are clan gun, but this is what's called the modern because the colors are sharper and the details are more fine-tuned.
Something that you can do with a mechanical loom.
Exactly. And
Right.
this one is called the ancient. So, and by ancient, we don't know what that means really, but I'm saying probably 1400s when
Wow.
they started dyeing cloth and it faded. Maybe it was a brighter blue and a brighter red at the time. But they
Those
used
vegetable
berries,
dyes.
Vegetable
Yeah,
dyes.
they
and
didn't
maybe-
hold the color very well.
Yes, indeed. And then they warm and washed them and they
Yeah.
became ancient.
They probably became ancient rather quickly.
Yes.
Actually, after a
Yeah.
couple of years, it was like, that smells ancient
Yeah.
anyway. Sure, wool, wet wool.
So one of the things that that Evan does on his adventures is he starts in Helmsdale and he ends up going all the way up to Orkney, which is above John O'Groats there, which I did also. And he just falls in love with Scotland like I did. And then he goes through this dilemma of, wow, I only got a one-way ticket because I thought, well, maybe I'll go to Amsterdam or somewhere else before I go back to Canada. And then the more he stays in Scotland, the more he thinks, why would I go back to Canada? And I'm not going to tell the ending.
Ooh, it's a
but-
surprise.
Yeah, it's a surprise, but I'm going to put for my own comment on the back. If everyone, okay, Ellie Gunn lives in McMinnville, Oregon. If everyone she loved would just move to Scotland, so would she.
Okay. It's true, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As much as you visit some place and you think, oh, this is so beautiful, I could live here. Then you think of all the ties that call you home.
Exactly. Yeah. Community, family, friends. Yeah.
So at what point did you begin sort of researching your Scottish heritage?
I'd always known about that my grandparents were both born in Scotland. And my dad's mom lived with us for a time when I was probably 6, 7, 8.
Okay.
And so I remember her quite well. And I always wanted to go back to where my grandfather was from and where she was from. And I did that in
Is that
09.
this area?
My grandfather actually is from this little town that's not on the map. It's called Latherin.
Okay.
And his, and I have Evan go there too, but his great-great-great-grandfather and grandmothers were all from that far north of Scotland.
Okay.
And they were all four different last names, because that's everybody who lived there.
Did they fish, or did they do sheep, or?
They were, the interesting thing I found out when I was there this last time, my great-great-grandmother, whose name was Mary Sutherland, was a midwife, which I
Really?
had been a midwife for
Yeah.
20 years, and was a vintner. She made wine
Wow.
in Scotland.
Yeah,
I
with
mean,
what?
with what, exactly? So I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, they had berries, rowan berry wine. I mean, I'm sure they fermented barley to make whiskey, so they must have figured
Oh,
out
yeah, there's all
fermenting.
that Scotch whiskey.
Yeah, I drank some while I was there, and so does Evan.
Good.
One of my lines is he liked the same pubs and the same ale I did, and I have a very low tolerance for drinking, so I had to practice, before I went to Scotland to keep up with the Scots.
Right.
I mean,
Exactly.
Yeah.
You don't want to come off as the weak link.
Exactly.
The weak link of the
those
American
Americans.
branch of the family. Yeah, they drink, American Budweiser instead of the real stuff.
Yeah.
And all of that. Sure.
No.
Huh. So, what was the most surprising about your most recent trip? What surprised you the most?
Oh, wow. Probably how it was still very emotional, I guess. And I just recall this one. I went for a walk. I walked a lot, and I went for a walk, and there was someone walking towards me, and right away he just said, hi, his name is George Gunn Sutherland. And I said, oh, my brother's name is George Sutherland Gunn.
Isn't that incredible?
Yeah. Just
Wow, where'd that come from?
Yeah, exactly. And so then I went to the historical group meeting in this little town, and he was there. And I walked in, and he goes, here comes Sutherland Gunn. And I said who he was. And, when I left that day, I was there just a couple of hours, and everybody was just sharing stories and information and photos with me, and I walked away crying. I mean,
I can
it was
imagine.
just-
Yeah.
Yeah, I just felt so at home and so accepted, and everybody was interested in what I was doing and happy I was there, and it was great.
Now, do you have plans to go back?
Well, I certainly want to go back. And the day I was leaving Helmsdale, the little town here, I was saying goodbye to people, and I'd been there for 8 weeks living there. So I had a lot of friends, and they were all, no, you can't leave, and well, I have to. Well, you have to promise to come back. And so I said, okay, I promise to come back. And then they all said, you're going to stay with us when you come back.
Oh, perfect.
So I
Okay.
have like 3 different offers
Great.
of places to live.
So you won't be homeless.
I won't be homeless this time.
Now, when is your book going to hit bookstores?
Any minute now.
Okay. Okay.
We're really close, Gail and I, to finishing all the little last edits. And I think I'm not going to do, last time for the first book I went to Highland Games and I did talks in the bookstore and did all these things. And to be honest, I just don't feel like doing all that.
Okay.
So what I think I'm going to do is, once I have the first 100 copies, I'm going to start sending out emails, and I'm going to have some place where, at a bar, maybe the Bitter Monk.
That'd be a good idea, sure.
Yeah, where I hang out and
Yeah,
say,
yeah.
okay, I'm going to be there on Sunday afternoon or Saturday afternoon from 1 to 4. Come by and have a beer, get your copy of the book, and call it good.
Perfect. Well, Ellie, thank you so much for coming today.
You're
I learned a
welcome.
lot. That was
Thank you,
wonderful.
Lynda.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're right.